Imagine this. The year is 1750. You're at the Palace of Versailles in the Hall of Mirrors. And the room is just packed with the absolute elite of Europe. We're talking kings, queens, generals, the most cynical, jaded people on the planet. But nobody's looking at King Louis XV. Everyone is crowded around this one man. He's dressed in simple black velvet, but he's wearing these diamonds that are so big they're almost tacky.
Right, too big to be real.
And he's casually telling a story about a conversation he just had with the Queen of Sheba.
Yeah.
Like it was last Tuesday over coffee.
And here's the crazy part. The room isn't laughing. They're not kicking him out. Half of them are completely terrified of him, and the other half are leaning in, taking notes.
That is the man we're looking at today. We are doing a deep dive into the Count of Saint Germain. And our mission here is, well, it's tricky. We're trying to piece together the life of a man who basically spent his entire life covering his tracks.
Yeah, the sources are all over the place. We have court records from France, from Russia, diplomatic letters, even spy reports.
Yeah.
And every single one paints a totally different picture.
It's like a historical jigsaw puzzle, but the pieces don't actually fit.
Exactly. Depending on who you ask, he was either the greatest charlatan of the 18th century, a diplomatic genius, a master scientist, or, if you go down the occult rabbit hole, a man who literally beat death.
So let's try to dig into the hard evidence. Let's see if we can separate the man from the myth. Because usually with these mystery men of history, the reality is kind of boring. But with Saint Germain, the reality might be even weirder than the legend.
I think that's absolutely right. When you strip away all the magic, you're left with someone who was arguably even more impressive.
Okay, let's start with the basics, or I guess the lack of basics. The Count of Saint Germain, that wasn't his real name.
No, and he didn't even pretend it was. Most imposters, they'd forge a birth certificate or invent some noble lineage to get in the door. Saint Germain did the opposite. He openly admitted it was a fake name.
He just told them, this isn't my name, but it's the one you're going to use.
Right, which is such a brilliant psychological move. By refusing to say who he was, he made everyone else guess. It automatically makes him the most interesting man in the room.
He creates a vacuum, and everyone rushes to fill it with their own theories.
Exactly. I mean, looking at the timeline, the records suggest he was born somewhere between 1690 and 1710, but he never confirmed it, and he always looked, well, ageless. He kept that ambiguity going for decades.
And the rumor mill just went into overdrive. I'm looking at our notes here, and there seem to be two main theories about where he actually came from, and they could not be more different.
They really couldn't. The first one is sort of the romantic option. This was the one his last patron, Prince Charles of Hesse, believed. He was dead certain that Saint Germain was the son of Prince Francis Rákóczi II of Transylvania.
Transylvania.
Of course.
Of course. You almost feel like he planted that rumor himself.
It does fit the brand a little too well, doesn't it? Leans right into that whole vampire thing that comes up later. But it made sense, politically.
How so?
Rákóczi was a famous rebel against the Habsburgs. If Saint Germain was his son, he'd be a huge target for assassination. It gives him really solid reason for all the secrecy. He wasn't hiding because he was a wizard. He was hiding to, stay alive.
It makes him heroic instead of just suspicious. Okay, but what's the other theory? The Queen theory. That one sounds a little more juicy.
Oh, it is. This one suggests he was the illegitimate son of Mariana of Neuburg, who was the widow of King Charles II of Spain, and a very wealthy banker from Madrid.
A queen and a banker. Well, that would explain the endless supply of cash.
It explains the cash and the education. And there's actually some evidence that points this way, specifically about his language skills. The man was an incredible polyglot. We've got sources confirming he spoke, and this is a long list: Spanish, Portuguese, German, English, Italian, French, Arabic, Russian, Latin, Greek.
Wait, there's more. Chinese and Sanskrit.
Chinese and Sanskrit. In the mid-1700s, I mean, that's not your standard boarding school stuff.
No, that implies some serious scholarly travel.
But here's the clue. Contemporaries all said that even though he was fluent in everything, he had this very specific native-sounding accent when he spoke Spanish and Portuguese.
Ah, so a peninsular accent. If he was a Hungarian prince from Transylvania.
The accent just wouldn't match up. The linguistics point to Spain, but the legend points to Transylvania. It's perfect misdirection.
I love that we can't even nail down his accent.
Yeah.
But before he was this international man of mystery, the records show he tried a completely different career. He was a musician.
And a very, very good one. This is our first solid documented appearance of him. London, 1743. He's not selling immortality elixirs. He's a concert violinist.
And people liked him.
They loved him. He composed arias for an opera called L'Incostanza de Lusa. He published violin sonatas. This is important because it proves he wasn't just some con artist. He had real world-class talent. He had the discipline to master an instrument.
He could have just had a perfectly normal, successful life as a composer.
But being a violinist doesn't get you a private laboratory from the King of France.
No, it does not. So let's follow that transition. He leaves London, goes to Vienna, then Paris in the late 1740s. And this is where the alchemist persona really takes off.
The turning point seems to be his relationship with the French Marshal Belle Isle. The Marshal gets badly wounded in a military campaign. The doctors have basically given up on him. Saint Germain steps in and poof, the Marshal makes a full recovery.
Do we know what he actually did? Was it medicine or just, charisma?
The sources are so vague on the how. It could have been advanced herbalism. Remember, he knew Chinese and Sanskrit, so he might have had access to Eastern medicine, but the result was what mattered. The Marshal was so grateful he brought Saint Germain to Paris and set him up with a state-of-the-art lab.
And in 18th century Paris, if you have a private lab, rumors of magic are not far behind.
Especially when you don't seem to age. This is when the eternal youth story really catches fire. There's this one famous anecdote with the Countess von Georgi.
Right, tell us that one.
So the Countess is this very old woman. She sees Saint Germain at a party, and she just freezes. She swears she met him 40 years earlier in Venice.
And the punchline is, she's old and gray, and he looks exactly the same.
Exactly the same. So she goes up to him and asks, "Was your father in Venice back then?" And he just smiles and says, "No, madame, but I myself was there."
Oh, that's good.
And then he reminds her of specific details of their conversation from 40 years ago. She's terrified. She literally asks him if he's a demon.
And he just laughs it off.
He plays coy, changes the subject. It's genius. He doesn't go around saying, "I'm immortal." He just implies it and lets the gossip do his PR for him.
It's personal branding before the term existed.
Yeah.
But he needed to do more than just look young to keep the king interested. He had to deliver something.
Right, which brings us to the alchemy. But we have to be careful with that word.
Yeah, because we think of wizards and spells. But back then, the line between alchemy and chemistry was, well, it was basically non-existent.
It was what we would call proto-chemistry or material science. He wasn't chanting over a cauldron. He was running experiments.
Like with the diamonds. That was his big ticket item, right?
That was his main pitch to Louis XV. He claimed he could take a flawed diamond, one with a black spot in it, and remove the flaw, which would make it 10 times more valuable.
Is that even possible with the technology they had?
Not really, no. Historians think he was probably using a small furnace to bleach inclusions, or maybe using clever foils to hide the flaws, or, just swapping the flawed diamond for a perfect one.
But if he was just swapping them, he'd be losing a fortune.
Exactly. The risk was huge. But the king was convinced. And we have that letter from Count Cobenzl in 1763 where he says with total seriousness that he watched Saint Germain turn iron into a metal as beautiful as gold.
Which was probably an alloy or some kind of plating.
Almost certainly. He was also an expert in dyes. He developed new ways to dye silk and leather. This was industrial secrets level stuff. He was bringing real economic value to France, which is probably why the king put up with all the magic talk.
It's like he was a one-man tech startup pitching to the court of Versailles.
That's a perfect analogy. He was pitching disruptive technology, better gems, better dyes, even better wine. But then he decides to pivot. Being a rich inventor isn't enough. He wants to play politics.
This is the part that always gets me. He wasn't just a mystic. He was a full-on diplomatic operative.
A secret agent. Because he had no official country, he was the perfect back channel. Monarchs could use him to send messages they couldn't put on paper.
Which leads to the mess at The Hague in 1760. This is where he really flies too close to the sun.
Oh, it was a total disaster. So France is at war with Prussia and England. King Louis XV wants peace. But his foreign minister, the Duke of Choiseul, wants to keep fighting.
Classic political infighting.
Right. So Louis XV, instead of just overruling his minister, goes behind his back. He sends Saint Germain to The Hague to secretly negotiate a peace treaty.
Can you imagine being the foreign minister and finding out the king's pet alchemist is conducting foreign policy?
Choiseul lost his mind. He couldn't go after the king, so he went after the agent. He accused Saint Germain of being a spy and a fraud, issued a warrant for his arrest. The king just folded, didn't protect him at all.
And Saint Germain has to flee Paris in the middle of the night.
Yep. Just like that, the Paris chapter is over. He changes his name again, this time to Saint-Simon, and he heads east.
to Russia, of all places.
And talk about timing. He lands in Russia in 1762, right as the tension between Tsar Peter III and his wife, Catherine, is about to explode.
The coup that makes her Catherine the Great.
Exactly. And somehow our violin-playing alchemist gets in with the inner circle of the coup plotters. He becomes friends with the Orlov brothers.
And the Orlovs were not mystics. They were stone-cold military guys. They were the muscle. How does Saint Germain even fit in with them?
That is the million-dollar question. Maybe he was funding them. He always had access to cash and gems. Or maybe his reputation as a prophet gave them the confidence they needed to make their move. Whatever he did, it worked. After Catherine takes the throne, Saint Germain gets a reward.
And this is where we get my favorite title in military history. I still can't believe this is real.
It is. The official Russian records list him as an officer with the title General Well Done.
General Well Done. It sounds like a bad translation.
It's probably a phonetic mangling of a French or Italian name, or maybe just a nickname that stuck. But he wore the uniform. For a little while, he was a Russian general.
From the opera house to a secret lab to the Russian army.
Yeah.
It's an incredible trajectory. But even he had to retire eventually.
Eventually. He ends up back in Germany, living under the protection of Prince Charles of Hesse-Kassel, the guy who believed the Transylvania story. And he actually settles down for a bit. He runs a factory, works on herbal remedies, studies religion.
But he couldn't resist telling the tall tales, could he?
Oh, he doubled down. In his old age, he wasn't just claiming to be 100. He was claiming to be ancient. He'd casually mention having dinner with Jesus and the apostles. He described the wedding at Cana like he was on the guest list.
But why? I mean, why go that far? That just makes you sound crazy.
It's about authority. If you can claim you were there for the crucifixion, you have more authority than any priest or pope. It's the ultimate trump card for a mystic. It ends the argument.
So the official record states he dies on February 27, 1784. There's a funeral, there's a grave. End of story.
In theory. But for a guy whose whole life was about misdirection, death is just another disappearing act.
Right. Because people started seeing him again after the funeral.
5 years later, 1789, the French Revolution is kicking off, and suddenly reports start coming out of Paris. Saint Germain is back.
And what was the story? Was he there to save the monarchy?
The opposite. He was seen as this prophet of doom, warning the royals that their time was up. It's this haunting image, right? The ageless courtier watching the world he mastered just burn to the ground.
And the sightings didn't stop there. He became like the Elvis of the occult world.
He did. He became a central figure for secret societies. The Rosicrucians, the Freemasons. Some of them claimed he was actually their legendary founder, Christian Rosenkreuz, just living under another name.
It's interesting how he shifts. In life, he was a scientist and a spy. After he dies, he becomes pure magic.
And that just keeps evolving. In the late 1800s, the Theosophical Society declares him an ascended master.
Which means what, exactly?
It means he's a spiritual being who guides humanity from a higher plane of existence. So he went from fixing the king's diamonds to guiding the spiritual destiny of the entire human race.
And then there's the vampire legend in New Orleans.
Yep, the Jacques Saint Germain story. A mysterious rich guy shows up in the early 1900s, throws these lavish parties, but never eats any food. That story claims he was a vampire.
Bringing it right back around to Transylvania.
He's the perfect blank slate. You want a spy? He's a spy. You want a vampire? He's a vampire. You want a spiritual master? He's that too.
So when we step back from all of it, what are we left with? Was he just a really, really good actor?
I think he was more than that. He was a bridge between two worlds. He had one foot in the Enlightenment, using science and reason and diplomacy, and the other foot in this older, medieval world of magic and secrets. He figured out how to use science to look like a wizard.
It's a commentary on expertise, really. If you act like you know more than everyone else in the room, eventually they start to believe you. They start asking you for advice.
He hacked the social hierarchy of Europe. In an age where your birth was everything, he proved you could just invent yourself as long as you had the charisma and the secret knowledge to back it up.
Which is a lesson that is absolutely still relevant. We see it all the time. The mystery genius who promises to change the world with some secret algorithm or technology.
And he kept the act going right until the very end, or what we think was the end.
Which brings up one last thought. If you were a man who had spent 40 years faking names and disappearing across borders, wouldn't a quiet, official death in a small German town be the perfect retirement plan?
It makes you wonder. The French Revolution was right around the corner. Maybe he saw what was coming, faked his death, and spent the rest of his life on a beach somewhere.
Or maybe he just picked a new name.
Yeah.
General Well Done was probably available.
Keep your eyes open. You never know who you might be sitting next to.
And that does it for our deep dive on the Count of Saint Germain. Thanks for joining us.
Keep questioning.
We'll see you next time.